Hey everyone, Sycra here, and in this lesson I just wanted to cover something that I've talked about before, but I thought it's worth repeating because I feel I could explain it better, and it's also something that I remembered recently because I'm using Clip Studio, and this is a fairly new program to me. I mean, I used Manga Studio for a little while for work, but that was a few years ago. And although this is the same thing, I'm not used to it the way I'm used to Photoshop. So one thing that I wanted to get into was inking. And I'd start with drawing, a rough thing. And I wanted to learn how to ink, and I knew I needed to practice. So it's like, okay, I need to practice in order to get better at inking. So fine, with the pencil thing, I'm comfortable. But I made like a brush, an ink brush that I'm happy with. And it's got a bunch of settings on it that make it really weird. Like it's hard to use in a way. And it's similar to a G pen, but a bit harder. And the reason is, it's got all these settings like pen pressure, tilt, and velocity, and I made a very custom setting. And the reason is because I wanted a brush that would look sharp, and like this one, see, it creates like a very sharp look, which I really like. But getting used to it was difficult because how do you get better at something? Well, practice, right? And so I went in and I started practicing, and you could see how like it doesn't work well if you draw sort of like this. And so what I was thinking is like, how do I get better with this brush quickly? And the topic of separating practice and performance helps in this, because if you think about performance as creating a piece, the way I think of it is a musician, they practice off stage and then they perform on stage, right? So when you're practicing, you might be practicing scales, for instance, like da 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 da, and you're not gonna be doing that on stage for the performance. So the practice is different than the performance, but it helps the performance. And so if I was just practicing while performing, I might be doing something like this. Like, oh, I have a new brush. It's difficult to use. How am I going to get used to it? Well, let me just draw faces and, just ink my things. And after a while, I'll get better. Yes, that is true. You will get better. And that's not bad as a method, but there is a faster way. And the faster way is to separate practice and performance. So you have practice here and you have performance here. And so to separate it is to say, what is it that I'm trying to do in this, and what is it that I'm trying to do in this? So the performance would be, I want like a pen, and I want it to create lines that I like. So I want to have good lines on a finished image, right? And then what do I have to do in practice is I just need to practice making lines and get more comfortable with the tool. Comfort with tool. Okay, but if I draw a character, for instance, and I'm practicing getting better lines, and at the same time I'm practicing making a finished image, that's actually slowing me down because I'm combining these two and they don't need to be. So if all I need to do is practice making lines and get comfortable with the tool, instead of doing all this, like trying to draw a character, and I do this with traditional as well. I just sort of forgot it momentarily. Is I'll start with a page and then I'll just make lines, and I'll make thick lines, thin lines, just all different kinds of lines, and get used to mark making, get used to the tool. How does it behave? Because if you think about like a character, right? Well, like here's a line, right? That's one line, and then there's two lines, and so how much, 3, 4, whatever. But how much practice do you get? You get like 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, 5 line. However, if all you're thinking about is mark making, it's like there's one line with variation, there's a different variation, there's a thick to thin. So I'm getting more mileage in terms of mark making. I'm also, because I'm not thinking about making a finished piece, I can think about making curves and just random things that don't really mean anything. And I can get a lot more mileage just scribbling if all I'm trying to do is to get comfortable with the tool, which I'm getting. I'm getting much more comfortable with the tool. So scribbling, making nonsense, quick lines, short lines, trying to figure out like, oh, how thin can I go? And then you can just like delete, and because it doesn't matter, it's not a finished piece. So you can delete and try more. It's like, oh, I can get this thin. Okay, how thick can I go? Well, I can get that thick. And then how thick to thin can I go? I start thick and then I get thin. So you'll notice like there's a bit of artifacting. So it's like, oh, okay, can I get rid of that? And by separating the performance and the practice, it makes it easier. And like maybe I can go from thin to thick. So with this brush, I'll make it available to you on my resources section. So if you go to sycra.net, click on resources, and you scroll down to Clip Studio paintbrushes. If you are using Clip Studio or Manga Studio, I think it works for both. It will be here, the inking brush. If that's interesting to you, if you want to try it out. But it's got a bunch of things. So for instance, if I draw quickly, the lines are thin. And if I draw lightly, the lines are thin. And if I draw slowly, the lines get thick. And if I press hard, the lines get thick as well. So it's more like a real pen. But anyway, that's basically it. There's not much to it, except think of this a lot, because it doesn't just apply to something like a pen. It's like, let's say you want to get better at painting, because I hear this a lot. I want to get better at rendering. Well, is the best way, and I'm not saying don't create finished pieces or anything like that, like just do this. No, start with this just to build that initial mileage. So you're getting a lot of points into comfort with the tool and mark making. And then, so after, it's like, okay, well, I've practiced, so I am comfortable with the tool. So that's all done. And I have practiced making lines. Okay, so that's all done. Now I can focus only on the finished image and, creating good lines, and I'll be much quicker, and I'll be able to, make lines faster that are better, and understand how to use the tool. So instead of making lines like this, like scratchy, I can make like one flowing line. And the way I use inking tools is to always remember to have my hand hovering over Control Z, or Command Z, I guess. And then draw a line, and if it's not good, Control Z, and then draw it again until it's the line that I want. And of course you start with something underneath. You wouldn't do this with nothing underneath. So let's say I want to get the side of that face. Maybe that went too far, so I just keep doing it until it looks right, and then I build from that. But yeah, if I want to do painting, think about this again from a performance and a practice and a performance thing. So for painting, practice, what do you need? You need to get good at, let's say, values, right? You're studying values. And then your performance might be something like, I want a picture with nice values. you know, you want to draw your figures and they've got like good skin tones and stuff with good skin tones, whatever it is. But understand that you could get better at values by doing the performance, but there's a faster way to get better at values. And I made this video called The Value Game. And I'll link to that in the description. But basically, it's just that. It's separating these two and then just focusing on the practice. And it's the same with perspective, you know. You might think, well, I have to draw a figure in perspective because I want to learn perspective. And then, you know, you have to think about all the vanishing points and stuff. Or you could just draw boxes in perspective. And what's easier, to practice this way or this way? And the thing is, it might get boring to just do boxes, so you don't want to do too much of one to the exclusion of the other. Like, you don't want to just practice if it's boring. But for me, for instance, with the inking thing, it's not boring to just make marks. And let's say I'm practicing values and trying to shade an object, right? Well, I could shade, you know, a box and a circle, and that might be boring. I mean, it might be okay, but it could be pretty boring, you know. It's like, oh, okay, so we have this, and this is this value, and the light's coming from here, and this is going to be this value maybe. Like, okay, and then for our circle, you have this, and you have your shadow, and you get reflected light. And that might be boring, and maybe it's not even, like, it's not inspiring you to want to create. Well, you don't have to just do that, but you can do things that have the essence of this that are more fun. So maybe that means something like, you know, do weird shapes and put values on this weird shape instead of just a basic shape. Or maybe do shapes that you like, that are interesting to you. The point is, you can make the practice a lot easier on yourself if you think of it separately from performance and if you make it enjoyable. And that's really what I'm finding is my mission more than anything now is, yes, you need mileage, but what's the fastest way to get mileage? And what's a way of, you know, gaining information so that you can draw quickly and well without having to spend years and years and years. So that's why this is my, you know, recommendation. It's to separate practice and performance. And if you're not used to a tool, the first thing you want to do is just get used to it. You know, try as much as you can and experiment. So I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.